Are you a wealth architect? That's somebody who wants to grow in all areas of life, not only financially, but mentally, physically, and spiritually. This is exactly what we're doing every single week on this show. I'm Emilio Despirito, your host of the Wealth Architect podcast, each and every week here. Wherever you're tuning in, we're glad you're here. We hope that this episode inspires you, motivates you to do something big, and maybe even blows your mind. Make sure you comment and interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. Let's get started. So for today's Market Pulse, I want to talk about the cost of waiting, and it's burdensome. So the cost of waiting in real estate could be huge, especially if you're waiting for those interest rates to drop. So let me explain what happens here. When you wait for the interest rates to drop, you're losing opportunity right now. Right now in the marketplace, wherever you are, there's fewer buyers out there that are actually hunting for homes because they're doing the same thing you're doing, waiting on the sidelines. So what you want to do at this time is you want to dive in. You're able to get properties likely under asking prices where you could do inspections, more contingencies in your favor, potentially closing costs, credits if you're buying new construction. Maybe you could put hardwood floors throughout the second floor, update the fixtures, whatever you want, right? It's all there for you right now when there's no other buyers out there. But here's what happens, and here is where you lose opportunity. Interest rates fall and you think you're saving money. But what happens is millions of buyers enter the marketplace. And now all of a sudden the competition rises and so doesn't the prices. Everything is supply and demand. That's why as a real estate professional, I'm guiding my clients to go purchase when there's fewer people out there purchasing, and I myself am purchasing when there's fewer people purchasing. So make sure you're not shooting yourself in the foot and waiting for things to happen. Go ahead, go take the bull by the horns, and it's educated and measured risk. And this is why working with the right real estate advisor is going to set you up for success in really any real estate market. Different plays, different ways to do things today. That's the play, and this is your Real Estate Market Pulse. Hey, a special thank you to our sponsor, Annie Mac Home Mortgage, whose Cash to Keys product is disrupting the industry. Sick and tired of finding the perfect home, not having your offer selected? I got to tell you, it happens all the time. With Cash to Keys, Annie Mac gives sellers a cash guarantee for each of their buyers' offers. Stop bidding and hoping. Instead, bid with Annie Mac and bid with confidence. Don't just bid, but win. Annie Mac Mortgage. When you're considering buying a home or a condo or even an investment property, it's so important to hire the right home inspector. Specifically, if you're in Rhode Island, the home inspector that I always like to recommend is Mike Auger of Patriot Home Inspections, homeinspectorri.com. Why do I use Mike? Number one, he's not an alarmist. He's not going to scare you. He's going to walk you through everything you need to know about the house. You can follow him around like a puppy dog. Ask as many questions as you can. He'll tell you how the heating system works, how the electrical works, how the plumbing is, and he could save you thousands of dollars or even a future headache. If you are looking to sell a home, it's important to disclose as much information as you can ahead of time, and Mike Ogren can put together a pre-list home inspection report, so when your realtor represents you and gives the buyer's agent the report, everything is disclosed that needs to get fixed, and the price is the price, and you sell your home like that. There's so many benefits to using the right home inspector, and again, Mike Auger with Patriot Home Inspectors, homeinspectorri.com. Check them out. All right, we're going to get right into our first segment today on the Wealth Architect podcast. Today's segment is one I've been looking forward to because we're not talking about wins, we're talking about scars. And that's what actually, right? That's actually what makes you better in business. So I'm joined today by someone who's been in real estate development since the 1960s, a true operator, not just as an author. He's built, lost, learned, and built again. His book, Making It in Real Estate, has become a go-to guide for developers who want real, no-nonsense insight, not theory, not fluff, but what actually works in the field. What I respect most about John is this. He doesn't just share his successes, he breaks down his mistakes. And today, as I hear him chuckling in the background, we're diving into one of the most powerful topics for anyone serious about building wealth in real estate. Lessons from my worst mistake, says John. Because if you're listening right now, whether you're an investor, a developer, or an entrepreneur, your biggest breakthrough is likely sitting on the other side of your biggest mistake. If you're willing to learn from it, John will go ahead. He's going to go through and teach it to you today. So, John McNellis, great to have you here.
Thanks, Emilio, and thank you for the kind introduction. One small
Welcome.
clarification. I was a little boy in the 60s. I started
You know,
really
it's so
I started in the 80s. I may look like I started in the 60s.
Oh, that's great. You know, it's so funny, and that's exactly why. So I came up with a really nice intro, and I did some research with about you on Chat GPT, and that is a perfect example why you can't take everything as gospel from Chat GPT.
That's a great segue into this whole thing, Emilio. So I checked the other day. I went on to chat and said, "Hey, chat, what percentage of developers have value-added investors fail?" I'll tell you the answer, but you guess first. Tell me how many of us fail over the long term.
I would say at least 90%.
Okay, you're tougher than I am. Chad said over the course of 10 years, 65% of development firms fail. My personal guess is closer to 80. And a lot of those, they may not fail, but they're barely getting by. They probably would have been better off, having a salary at some institution. So talking about mistakes is a good thing because the mistakes will kill you in the business.
It sure is. And I want to start the segment though also by giving you a shout out for your third edition of Making It in Real Estate, Thriving as a Developer. This is such a fantastic book, John, and I got to praise you for a second here. The third edition
Please do.
is it's so fantastic. To all of our listeners, listen, I've been listening to books on Audible because I'm always go, 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 go. I haven't actually sat down and picked up a book and read it chapter for chapter as I have with this in a long time. And I want to tell you what caught my attention right away. So, John autographed this and sent it over to me. So, of course, anybody that spends the time to do that, I'm going to open their book and look at it right away. I learned real estate the same way I learned the facts of life on the street. I learned development gradually, deal by deal, often acquiring experience just after I needed it. The first two sentences hit me so hard, John, and I was like, this book is it. This is legit. And I literally felt your wisdom jump out of the page.
Thank you.
And I said, you know what? I want to thank you. Thank you. I want to make it not only real estate, but I want to make it in business. I want to make it in life. What can this man who's been doing this since the 80s, not the 60s, what can he teach me? And then one other thing, I started reading chapter by chapter, and the chapters are like 3 pages long. They're hard hitting. There's no fluff. It's just boom, bottom line. So if you're a bottom line type of person and you love, learning quickly, this book is for you. Making It Real Estate. Pick it up on Amazon, or you could go ahead and check out johnmcnellis.com. The topic today is basically going over discussing lessons from my worst mistake. Let's jump into that. So, why did you choose mistakes to talk about today, John?
Well, because everybody you see on TV or the podcast, there are always these guys who are slick and they talk about how easy it is, to make a million, buy a house, flip it the next day, make a million. Everybody talks about how successful they are. And frankly, guys,
Mm-hmm.
it's a load of crap. Our business that we just talked about is high risk. If all you hear are these super optimistic guys telling you how easy it is to get rich, well, then when you're out on your own and you encounter your first failure, you're going to say, "Oh my God, I'm a loser. Everybody else is killing it at this." So the point I wanted to make, and there's a new section in the book, lessons from my worst mistakes, was that everybody, absolutely everybody, loses money in real estate sooner or later. There are just too
Mm-hmm.
many variables that are outside of your control. I mean, if you were Bill Gates, Einstein, whoever, and if you went heavy into commercial real estate in 2019, you got your clock cleaned by COVID. and you can lose money, and we have through sheer bad luck, and let's call COVID sheer bad luck. But
Hmm.
sheer bad luck, if you're really careful and you don't make other mistakes, doesn't tend to wipe you out. But there are just so many mistakes that you can make. So what I wanted to do at this point in my career, it doesn't matter, is just share some of my worst mistakes, uh, things that I did wrong, with readers, so they can say, "Oh yeah, let me try to avoid that one."
Mm, I love it. And you've identified 10 mistakes here. But before we jump into that, I want to say I find a lot of comedy in the way you write. I love how you write. And you said something here about how people who say, I'm trying to find it, you might know, people who say that they don't lose are the outliers, especially if they've done 12 transactions. And you said, pay attention to the last two syllables in
Yes.
outliers.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
right.
that.
Yeah, no, you will
Yeah.
you'll encounter guys, and I still do, and I have friends who swear they haven't lost money, and let's call them outliers. But on the other hand, if you have this is a legitimate approach to real estate. If you have the never sell approach, you buy, you develop, you hold forever, well, then you haven't lost money, except you
Yeah.
have, because you buy, you develop, and then it's worth 10 million, say, right, Emilio, and then interest rates skyrocket, or COVID happens, and that 10 million, you haven't sold it, but now it's like a stock you haven't sold that's gone from 100 down to 50. You've lost money. You just haven't really realized the loss. So I'll say to those
Mm.
guys, sure, if you've never sold a property, maybe you haven't technically lost money, but in practice, in reality, you have.
That's so true. And the opportunity loss too, right?
Sure.
As you're hanging on to these properties, the market shifts, other things could come up, but you just never know. One thing I wanted to say, when we were talking about people who say they never lose, that reminds me right off the rip of those people who go to the casino all the time and
Yeah.
claim to always be up. Like, wow, you are just an enigma. You are just so unbelievably awesome. Like, how the casino is made for you to lose, kind of like the horse track, which you said, I think, in the birdcage in chapter 51 of your book. You had a good thing saying the horse track was made so the horse track wins,
Right.
or whatever the analogy was. I slaughtered that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, exactly. My grandfather, after he retired from the fire department, became a security guard at the racetrack with the horses, and he bet every single day. And as the family legend goes, when he won, he would talk about it. When he came home losing, he'd just keep his mouth shut. But he,
Uh.
no, he actually died at the racetrack, which is another family story of old age. The horses didn't kill him.
The gambling and cigarettes, maybe. God bless them. John, you say in your book, right? Chapter 50, by the way, everyone loses money. You say that there's basically 10 ways to lose. Can we go through these 10 ways?
Emilio, there are probably 100 ways to lose, but there's writers, you have to pick a number, 5, 10, 15, 20. So when I just look back on my career, I just thought, okay, how, in looking back on the deals that went badly for us, what did we do wrong? What mistakes did we make? And the very first mistake, and the one that everybody makes sooner or later, is you pay too much. You overpay.
Mhm.
Uh, and then this goes back to that line in there about only the track wins at a horse race. If there's a lot of competition for a property, I've seen it happen again and again. The ultimate buyer just says, I got to have it, like at an auction. And they'll put their pro formas in their jeans and say, okay, we'll pay the extra $500,000. They pay too much from day one. That's a great way to lose money. And yes, we did do that.
So that's an emotional thing.
Well, it can be emotional. It can also be a matter of need. When you're starting out and you need to get deals done, you left your job, say, and you've got a year or two's worth of savings, and you're trying to get deals done. You've got to get it across the finish line. So you're really desperate. You're under a lot of pressure to get deals done. That was true with us. The good news there is that if you stick with it and you have some reasonable success, and your prior deals will pay the rent for you, you'll get better at that. You won't need to get deals done as much.
So overpaying, number one.
Overpaying, number one. Absolutely number one.
Number two.
I would say over leveraging. And this is necessarily in the order of a weight, but I think overpaying and over leveraging are the best two ways to get your
They're
clock.
biggies.
Yeah, they're probably the two biggies.
I see over leveraging all day, every day. I see people do it, especially young guys, in their 40s. They're all excited. I see, I'm guilty of it, right? Just leveraging everything I can, diving all in, right?
Oh, sure. Well, the Great Recession, commercial values dropped 40%. And if you had a 50% loan, and then you had at least 10% of equity left. But if you had a 70% loan, you were underwater. And this happens again and again. We do go through recessions. We do go through, hopefully not another pandemic, but the over leverage. And when rates were 3%, oh yeah, it's cool to have a 75% loan, but whoops, suddenly rates have doubled. They're what are they, north of 6, 7, 8, depending on who you're borrowing from. The leverage can kill you. Absolutely. We were in my worst deal, the one that I devote a whole chapter to. We had a financial partner, a savings loan out of Houston, Texas, and we borrowed not 100%, but 103% of the purchase price. That enabled us to put some money in our pockets and have a little bit of a development cushion there. We were so wildly over leveraged on a deal that was, in hindsight, I was 29 years old. It was way too big for us. And of course, it went okay until it didn't, and we ended up losing the whole thing.
That was a $20 million deal back in, I believe you said 83, which is equivalent to over 60, was it $64 million today? 65 million today? That's a massive undertaking for a 29-year-old. It's like, I feel like you went through your leveraging phase that most people do in their 40s. You got that out of the way, and probably your late 20s into 30s.
You could say I was precocious, I guess. Oh no, and that at that time, and I think it's said in the book, but I think if you added up all of my dream equity and the little deals I'd done to that time, maybe I was worth $1 million on paper, but I probably had like $10 in my pocket. And I had an older partner who pretty much knew what he was doing, but I sure as hell didn't. And it's like, what are we doing? On that deal, we overpaid on day one because because people were throwing money at us. We over leveraged it beyond belief. It was way too big for us, which is another mistake. There's an expression in boxing, you can't take your punch with you. If you go from a flyweight to a welterweight or whatever, you can't do it. And that deal was way too big for us to do. So on day one, when we bought that thing, Emilio, we had made 3 big mistakes. Even then, it might have worked out, but we had this plan. This was a 300,000-foot shopping center in Sacramento. Brilliant location, right, kind of a main and main. And there were 6 lanes of traffic in all 4 directions. Great piece of property, but it had been built, we bought it in 83. It had probably been built 10 years before, but the prior developer was a very famous guy in real estate, so I won't mention his name. He had decided not to build what he should have done, which was just a standard convenience supermarket drug center. He decided he was going to be his legacy project. So he built this 300,000-foot ye old English shopping center. Instead of having everything front the street the way it should, only 2 buildings onto the street. And he had this like really cool, if you liked ye old English architecture, this maze of little 1-story shops all surrounding this really nice park. So it was a great place to go have a sandwich and sit in the shade in hot Sacramento, but it was a terrible place to shop. In short, he had ruined the location by a terrible design. And when we took it over, it had never achieved more than 80% occupancy. In fact, there was some spaces in there, in fact, a lot of spaces or the developer hadn't even bothered to pour the foundation. So you'd look in, it never leased, and you'd see dirt, where the floor should be. And the idea is behind that is actually legitimate. You don't want to pour a floor and then have a restaurant come in and jack it all out, putting in their plumbing lines and whatnot. But anyway, when we took it over, we had to get it redeveloped in order for it to succeed, for us to succeed. And the next big mistake we made on that one was we had, in hindsight, what was a terrible plan that was way too ambitious. We were going to take this 300,000 foot center and then combine it with a Macy's on one end, Montgomery Ward it was on the other, tear down the ward, build a Nordstrom, and then attach the whole thing into this glorious enclosed 600,000 foot mall, which Lord knows that, let's see, 20 million, that probably would have been 80 million or like 400 or 500 million in today's dollars. I mean, I was so far out of my weight class. And again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It wasn't called the Great Recession, but the recession in the early 90s, started around 89, 90, 91, was, as far as I recall, maybe because it hit me harder, was really bad. We ended up running out of time, running out of credibility. Our financial partner actually ran out of money. Here's a pro tip. When it's non-recourse to you in a partnership agreement with a financial partner, it's also non-recourse the other way. They can walk away from you any day they feel like, and you're at level holding the bag. They don't have to fund that money. Read the fine print. That's what happened.
Wow.
And so we had the property with no financial partner at the depth of a recession, and we had to give it back.
Oof. So you got foreclosed on.
Yeah, in essence, yeah. I think it was a deed in lieu, but yeah, maybe technically not a foreclosure, but yeah, we gave it back. And
Got
then
it.
I spent many years paying back the debt on that. I learned a lot. I like to say on deals, you may or may not make money, but you're always learning. So you could say I pay a lot of tuition on that one, to take it to the next level.
Oh, sure. I call it being a student of the game. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking with book author and developer John McNellis of his latest book, about his latest book, Making It in Real Estate, the third edition, expanded and updated. You can catch this on Amazon. You can also get it if you'd like to buy in bulk on his website as well, johnmcnellis.com. And by the way, I want to mention, John, I'm going to give you a big head for a second here. Your book is required reading in UCLA, Stanford, Berkeley, Vanderbilt, and several others as well too. So,
Clemson.
if you're Clemson,
I'm for some odd reason I'm big at Clemson.
I don't think it's an odd reason. I mean, it just makes sense, and actually, I believe you're a professor as well, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not?
I will do guest appearances. In fact, I've got one coming up at Menlo College next week and Stanford the week after. I'm good for about an hour, but I could never teach a whole class. I start to bore myself after an hour.
Oh, come on, give yourself some credit here. But that's great stuff. So, and we were just talking about the 10 mistakes, right, that John has seen over the years that he has made in his worst deals. And we're going to get back to that in a second, but one thing I noticed in one of these chapters here, I think it was chapter 50 or 51, John looked at all of his deals. Okay. And John, you've done about 70 developments in total throughout your career. Is that right?
That was right, I think, about 10 years ago. And we're still
Okay.
doing deals since now we're pushing 100, give or take 100 deals. Roughly 2.5 deals a year.
Okay, that's great. All right, so you're at about 100 deals, but in this book where it was talking about 70 deals, it said that you had about a 7% failure rate, right? So you had about a 7% failure rate where you lost money on a project.
That was like a hard loss. Like, say we paid $1 million for it and ended up selling it for 800,000. But there were at least that many more deals, let's say another 10%, where we didn't make money. In my experience, Emilio, a deal takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If you work for 5 years on a deal and all you lose is your time, that is really important. So I would push it closer, 15 to 20% on deals we either didn't make any money on, or, we lost. And particularly if you've got financial partners, you can structure it so, and a lot of guys do, they're not going to personally lose money, but they are going to lose several years of their career to bad deals. The other point, back to this thing that when you're young, you need to do deals. Our worst mistakes came early in my career. Probably by 1990, we had made most of them. Once you get to a point where you have adequate cash flow and you can sit back and say, we don't have to do this deal, we can pass on it, then your batting average vastly improves. And that's what happened with us. So I would like to say, now, that isn't the case. I'd like to say all of my mistakes are in the past, or all the money losers are in the past. But right now, today, back to bad luck, the war in Korea. So we've got, I have a younger partner that we do high-end condominiums here in Palo Alto. I don't have to tell you, as far as I can tell, with the exception of the extreme high-end stuff in Miami, the housing market is kind of frozen at the moment. So we're sitting there with these beautiful condos for sale, and they're not moving. Now, do I think we're going to lose money? Probably not. But are we losing profit every single day because there's just no activity? My partner told me, Emilio, that we went from like throngs at open houses, and then once the war started, boom, crickets. People are saying, whoops, what's going to happen? And here in Silicon Valley, it's very stock market dependent for wealth, and the stock market has declined. Again, that's bad luck. Fortunately, haven't made the mistake on this one of being over leveraged. I'm sure I'll lose money again in the future, but not as often or as much as we did in the past.
I think that, by the way, I think what's going on in Iran, hopefully it will be short term, right? And we're seeing pockets of markets, especially in the Northeast, that are still a seller's market. So stuff is selling pretty quickly and inventory is pretty tight. That'll change. That's going to turn around. Keep in mind, all that pent up buyer demand is just going to come back, especially once the rates come back down. But it's our guess when that'll be. I'm hoping in a few months, but we got to see what happens here. But this cannot last forever. And, but one thing I want to say, and I'm curious your take here, is when everyone else is panicking and pulling out, I mean, isn't that the time to buy?
Yeah, that's the old expression, buy when there's blood in the streets.
Yes,
but
yes.
That's hard to do. First, it takes money when no one has any, and it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude.
And yeah, definitely. And thinking outside of the box too. Seller financing can come in big on certain projects as well too, but that's a whole different topic. So you had in here number 3 of these 10 mistakes, right, that you've basically learned over the years. Number 3, abusing the 1031 tax deferred exchange. Now, I'm curious what you mean by that, because I've personally leveraged 1031. A lot of my clients do. It's an area I specialize in. So this one here intrigues me.
Yeah, I think the 1031 is a fabulous tool, but it's like a chainsaw. If you use it correctly, you can clear a forest. You can do really well with it. But if you use it incorrectly, you can chop your arm off. What I've seen too often in my career, Emilio, is the tax tail wagging the economic dog. Now, I'm sure you've seen, this has happened to me. In fact, there's a chapter in there where I did exactly this, where in our case, I was in 2006, and it was a great year for real estate. We bought a piece of property and we sold 90% of it a few months later for a big profit. So which would have all been ordinary income. So I said, geez, I've got to trade. And I could not find a trade property. We looked and we looked and we looked, and we had all these high expectations. We needed a certain quality property. But as the 45 days went by, and I'm sure your listeners know, you have 45 days to identify a trade property, and then 180 or a total of 180 to make the exchange. Well, about the 42nd day, I was desperate. I ended up buying 4 lots in a little town called Weed, California. Yeah, not a joke. It's actually called Weed. I don't think they grow any there. But anyway, these 4 lots, I stepped up and bought them. and things were going great at that time with the market. And then, like about a month after we closed on it, the Great Recession started. Guys, I still have 3 of those lots 18 years later. The only thing that grows on them are weeds.
Perfect.
I did the arithmetic. Had we just paid our taxes, that's at 50% in taxes, say, and put the money into the S&P 500 and just let it sit there for the 18 years, we would have been a light year ahead of where we are today. So my point is that trades are great, and we've done them a bunch, but you can't get desperate about a trade. And I've seen guys say, "Oh, I need to trade," and they'll trade into it, like let's say a Rite Aid in South Dakota, which I'm going to get a 5% return on it. I say, well, okay, but then what happens? Picking on Rite Aid, it dies, and then you end up with an empty building. So I would just think you have to be really careful with 1031s. Don't trade into nothing you wouldn't buy if you weren't trading. If you pull that off, trades are great, but people lower their expectations when they trade just to avoid taxes.
They do.
That's
It's kind of like it's kind of like after you chug a few shots of like tequila and then you go at it. And anytime there's desperation, it's not going to be a good outcome for sure. And I see people spend that 1031 exchange money as if it's, free. And it's not. Well, what do you suggest if they can't find anything? What about putting it in like real estate and like a REIT, like real estate investment trust or something? Would you suggest that if their back is against the wall, or just pay the taxes?
Yeah, I don't think they're REITs. I think there are, what do they call those, tenancy in common funds. I would run away from those, like they're poison. I would not do that. My suggestion, and I've been accused of being somewhat of a contrarian, is pay your tax. Pay the tax, put the money in the S&P 500. It has averaged, by the way, a 10% a year compounded over the last 100 years. Now today, it's down 4 or 5% year to date, but I'm pretty sure commercial real estate is too. But that's hard to do. People are just so tax adverse that they won't do that. You put your money in one of those tenancy in common funds. I've just seen bad results with those. And it's usually a lot of money, right? So you're giving up control entirely to guys that you don't know. And it could be that they're a great fund to start out with. It could be, Emilio's fund, but then he trades, the company to somebody else. And it's just, I don't like it. I would not do that. I would rather keep control of my own funds.
We're a lot alike in that area too, because I always hear, and you can imagine, having this show, I interview people from all different walks of life, different businesses, and everybody's selling something, right? I've always had a hard time with forking over my money to somebody else to control, especially at this age in my career. John, a few other things, right? And we're quickly running out of time, which is crazy. I want to jump through the next 6 of them or 7 of them. And I'm curious, and we'll cover these real quick. So doing the wrong size deals, overdeveloping, failing to pivot, trusting the government, inadequate due diligence, holding out for the last dollar, and then just plain bad luck. Out of all of those, which one do you think is most significant there to talk about with our listeners?
Failing to pivot is, and by that I mean, if persistence isn't among your top 10 character traits, you probably shouldn't be in development, because it's a tough business, and you're always going to encounter, at best, kind of benign indifference. And at worst, there's a host of people, with torches are trying to run you out of town when you want to develop. But back to my big shopping center, Birdcage Walk, we failed to pivot. And in that case, it wasn't the city fighting us. It was, we couldn't put the deal together. We didn't pivot in time. The more typical situation is you come in and you want to build a 100,000-foot office building, and the neighborhood says, "Are you crazy? Everything else is 20,000 feet, or everything else is 3 stories. You want to go 8. You can fight that, but at some point you have to say to yourself, "I can't fight City Hall forever." You got to pivot. you can be too persistent and you can work too many years trying to get something finished. So my advice is that old line, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Well, if at first you
Yeah.
don't succeed, take another hard look at it, and maybe you're approaching it the wrong way, and maybe what you should do is be compromising, with the neighborhood. Instead of a 100,000-foot tower, bring it down to 50. That was the point.
Have you seen over the years a lot of people get so like invested in their vision of something where they end up just holding out, holding out, holding out, and it crashes and it burns? Does that happen more often than not?
It happens. I don't know about more often than not, but it definitely happens. If people or that they'll cling to, like we did in Birdcage, they'll cling to a plan that just isn't going to work. Or, what I see more often is people holding out, particularly they're not professionals. People have a great piece of real estate holding out forever. They'll
Mm.
have 20 acres and they'll say, well, gee, 2 miles away, somebody paid $30 a foot for a half-acre corner. So I want $30 a foot for my 20 acres. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, it doesn't work that way. You know, you it's only worth $10 a foot. Yeah, I see that a lot. We as professionals have to deal with the general public. Usually the sellers of the property we want all
Mhm.
the time. You can spend too much time trying to talk a farmer into selling his property at the real value, and I guess I've done that too. That's not in the book.
The saying, it's funny because when I go to list properties, John, I hear it's usually those people that are sitting and waiting for that optimal situation that basically never comes. They always say this one exact statement. I know what I got. I know what I got, right? And then they would just wait and they wait and they wait. And you could call it, lack of education. You could call it greed. You could call it, misinformation, whatever it is. But it's sad. And as soon as I hear that, I know what I got, especially if their expectations are unrealistic for the current and what I think the future market is going to bring in that area. I know that that's a conversation I'm never going to win.
Yeah, that's right.
That's usually when I walk away because I know what you got too, and it's just not aligning. So I wish you the best. John, really fantastic having you back on here again on the Wealth Architect podcast. And for our listeners, again, pick this book up. This book is absolutely wonderful. You're going to love it. That's right. Making it in real estate, thriving as developer. But I have something. This book here that John sent me is autographed, which is awesome. And that literally made my day when I opened up the mail and saw that, John. So thank you so much. Again, Making It in Real Estate, Thriving as a Developer, third edition, expanded and updated by John McNellis. Pick this up on Amazon, or if you want to buy it in bulk, like I bought 5 the other day, I'm going to buy 10, 15 more, and I'm just going to keep buying these, and I'm going to hand them to my clients, friends, or family members, anybody I know that wants to become a developer or really wants to excel in development, even if they already are, should definitely pick this book up because there's a lot of wisdom in here. And John, again, I can't thank you enough. So check it out at johnmcnellis.com or on Amazon. John, appreciate you.
Emilio, thanks so much. It's always a lot of fun. Very much enjoyed it.
You're welcome, John. Thank you. We'll see you very soon, I hope. I'd like to take a minute and thank Ted Tepuzis, my friend over at Tepuzis and Associates, for sponsoring this program, making this message possible for you to hear. And if you're fortunate enough to live in Florida, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or Connecticut, you're going to want to leverage the power behind Ted Tepuzis and his team for your real estate transactions. You need a legal team that understands real estate inside and out, and this is what they do, specifically real estate. So go ahead and contact our friends at taclosinglaw.com and let them know where you heard it, right here on The Wealth Architect, Tepuzis and Associates. All right, so I'm excited. We've got a gentleman who is in Realm Global with me, and Realm Global, by the way, is literally the top 800 or so, some of the top real estate agents in the United States, Canada, and across 18 countries, across 150 different brands. So this is a wonderful collaborative, an amazing network with some strong, very strong technology behind it to put us all together and help each other move properties, some of the best, nicest properties across the world. But today we've got a gentleman. His name is Kevin Ranker, and he's the partner at Compass in San Juan Islands in Washington. I did not know there was a San Juan Island in Washington. And Kevin, very humble guy, even though he ranks in the top tier of real estate agents across the world, a very humble guy that's more focused on helping his clients, with their financial and real estate decisions. Kevin, I'm excited to have you on here on the Wealth Architect with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Amelia. Thanks so much for having me today.
Good. Hey, man, I'm excited to have you too. And, we're going to jump in about your topic on how to know when you can trust your financial and real estate advisor. But before I do that, I just want to say, Kevin, you just told me, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, a month ago you broke your back. I hope you don't mind me saying, and you are in front of me, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're probably in pain. But I just want to say that's a champion right there, man. That's a champion mindset. How are you doing that?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing, don't get me wrong. This sucks. It's a heavy recovery. I broke my back in 3 places, snowboarding, jumping off a cliff, hit a rock halfway down. But anybody who knows me knows that it's impossible to slow me down. So this has actually slowed me down a little bit, which is really hard for me. But look, no surgery needed, and I'm going to make 100% recovery. So I'll be back in the mountains soon.
Wow. All right. Back in the mountains soon. And I needed to start with that so that our listeners and our viewers can literally understand the type of guy that they're talking with right here. And immediately that builds trust with me. I mean, anybody that has that. And before I segue, how are you doing that? Is it a mental thing? Is it like, is it like, are you like, how do you put your mind at that? Like, how are you overcoming such pain and getting through that?
Well, first of all, I'm not all doped up. I don't really like meds, so I'm trying to stay off of those. And it is almost entirely mental. I'm just passing a month since the accident. For the first 3 weeks, they said I can stand up or lay down. I can't sit. And they really didn't want me doing anything except for walking very slowly, which is, my mom used to say I've got 2 speeds. I'm either asleep or running. So walking is boring for me. But it's mental, and it's really focusing on kind of what matters and healing yourself, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, all of it. So getting back into a lot of Tai Chi now that I can kind of move my upper body a little bit and just
Yeah.
focus on healing.
Good for you. That's amazing. There's a lot of inspiration to be taken from some of our listeners who are going through some tough times in their life, mentally, physically, spiritually. And Kevin, that's fantastic. And if you want to follow Kevin online, you could just go ahead and Google him, Kevin Ranker Compass. You're going to see all of his social media, his website. Go ahead, connect with him, reach out to him, especially as well too if you're looking to do any type of real estate transactions in the San Juan Islands of Washington. So, Kevin, let's jump into it. So, how to know when you can trust your financial / real estate advisor. So, give us a little bit of a background. So, you were in political fundraising, and I'm so curious, how do you relate that with your current work as a senior real estate advisor?
So for about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years, I was the top, if not one of the top fundraisers politically in kind of north of California.
Hmm.
And the main reason, looking back, one of the main reasons I got there is I would have donors who I had relationships with who would they would be used to going to a politician and saying, "Hey, I'm going to give away $1 million in this campaign cycle. Where should I give it?" And the politician would say, "Well, you should give it to me and to my PAC
Sure.
and to my caucus." And what I would say is, I might need a little bit of it, but actually there's this race in Kansas City. There's this race in New Jersey. There's this race in California. And I would get to know my clients really well. So I would know what they cared about
Mm.
and what their passions were. And I would steer them towards campaigns and issues, not just individuals, that I knew would really matter and resonate with them. And
Mm.
so I brought that to my work as a senior real estate advisor, where I don't want to just sell you a home. I want to make sure that A, it's the right place for you, but B, you're making a strategic financial decision as well. And sometimes that means that it's not my sale. Sometimes it
Hmm.
means that, you may want to work with somebody else in a different area, and I'm happy to introduce you. It also may mean that even though it's my listing and I'd love to be a dual agent and get both sides of a deal, I don't think this house is right for you.
That's huge. And that right off the rip separates you from 90% of the agents out there. And I think that real estate is one of those businesses where you're a consumer, you need somebody that's going to be straight up with you. And I hate to say it, because we're both in the business and there's a lot of people I've met over the years that are amazing, but over the years, some real estate agents have been called like used car salesmen, and nothing against used car salesmen, but just peddling whatever, very transactional. And I know that you have over the years actually talked people out of buying a home. Can you give us like some examples? Like what was it that you spoke somebody, you said, "Hey, this is not the right house for you." Do you have any examples of that?
I really do. I have she's become a very close friend, actually. We'll call her Susan. So this client was looking at, and again, this was my listing, $13 million listing. So I'd
Wow.
love to be a dual agent on that.
Sure.
And she was looking at that home, and we spent a lot of time at the property, walking through the property and having conversations about where she was with her liquid assets, where she was with her full portfolio of assets, how much was in property and hard assets versus other investments. And in the end, for a few reasons, I didn't feel it was the right home for her. And so instead of trying to push her and tell her, oh my gosh, which I probably could have done, I can be quite influential and quite convincing. So instead of trying to push her to purchase this house, in the end, after our third time on the property, spending hours there, I turned to her and I said, Susan, I don't know if this is the house for you. And here's why. And I talked her through where she was. She had told me that she had a lot of investments in property, and her
Mm.
other financial advisors were telling her that she might be too heavy into hard assets. But that aside, I also talked to her about how I reminded her she had been looking for a generational estate, a place where her adult children and grandkids and everybody could come at the same time. And while
Mm.
this had the capacity for that, the home was immaculate with 6 different living bedrooms and 3 different living areas. So it fit ballpark, kind of a generational estate. It did not have the rolling lawns and other things for the younger kids to go play on. It did not have some other attributes that she was looking for. And I reminded her of that. And what I told her in the end is, I think we can find something better for you. I don't think this is the house for you. And she pulled
Mm.
out of it. And she was already talking to me about writing up an offer. So I convinced my client not to purchase a $13 million property from me.
Hmm.
In the end, she and I, like I said, we've become close friends now. And she and I speak regularly about her entire portfolio. And I've become more of an advisor to her than just a real estate broker, which I think is so very critical. She also has come to not just trust me, but really respect my advice. And since that point in time, she spent another 23 million with me. So it obviously financially was a win for me to be honest with her and upfront with her and give her the advice she needed, not what I
Yeah.
want to tell her. And in turn, it ended up being a benefit for me as well.
Wow, absolutely. It makes sense. You have somebody, you, who had all of the incentive in the world to double in that transaction, basically turn that $13 million transaction into 26 million. And for those of you that are not in real estate listening, the way it works is if it's 13 million on the list side, it's counted basically as another 13 million on the buy side. And that's 26 million in total volume, which is impressive. So let's talk about building trust and transparency with our clients, is super critical, right? It's everything. Can you tell us about your track record and how this relates to building trust and making clients feel comfortable?
I mean, you see me, I'm not in a suit today. I think, an excellent suit, by the way, great color on you. I
Thank you,
do
bro.
think that a lot of realtors, I mean, you put your face on your business card, maybe it's on a park bench as you drive by. I think a lot of realtors maybe think too much of themselves. And as you said, kind of there's an analogy often to a used car salesman. We've got to
Yes.
break that mold. We've just got to be honest and upfront and frankly casual. I have a lot of clients in the from the film industry and from the music industry. And the last thing they want is someone who really gives a crap about who they are publicly. What they want is somebody who's going to give them the best and most honest advice and also be honest with them. And
Mm.
so we live in these stunningly beautiful islands, an hour and a half off the coast of Washington State. We have tremendous, beautiful estates here. We also have some very small rural farms and a real sense of community. And people don't just want to have a home here, they want that sense of community. And they want
Mm.
to know that I'm not selling them just the Disneyland watered down version of what a community should be, that I'm
Hmm.
really giving them the full aspects. And one of the ways I do that, frankly, which is a little bit of a sidebar here, is I have this beat up old island truck. And, I was looking for an island truck for years, and my friends would say, you should buy my Ram diesel for 18 grand, or you should buy my Ford for 30 grand. And I said, no, island truck. It's going to do a couple things. It's going to go to the dump once a month, and maybe it'll pull a boat out of the water a couple times a year, and then I'll drive it around for fun. So I ended up, I was actually down in Seattle. A buddy of mine pulled up in this crappy, rusted, one headlight 1989 Ford Ranger that's got this splash down the side that looks like a Go-Go's video. I mean, it's just awful, and I love it. And he said, God, you know anybody who wants to buy a truck? And I said, yeah. And he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he said, all right, $500 and you buy the beer. So I bought 2 pints of beer and drove home in a new truck. That
Love it.
truck has gotten me more ins with different people because, they expect that the realtor is going to show up in their, Mercedes, SUV or their Porsche
Sure.
or whatever. And I've got a
Yeah.
great in. I love my car. But most of the time I show up in that little beat up Ford Ranger, and it's, the exhaust is dragging off the back. People love it. And they immediately get a sense of, wow, this guy's real. And then the
Mm.
funniest thing is I also, it's almost impossible to get lodging in these islands in the summer. So often we will set up our clients in guest houses that we own on the water.
Mm.
And then I'll give them that truck to drive around, and they absolutely love it. So I've actually got photos of some of my, billionaire clients, and they're in this beat up truck, and they're the happiest people ever. And that all relates back to this conversation because it's just about being authentic and at our truest form, right? So
Hmm.
I have some very nice suits of my own. I used to have to wear them every day. Now I'm very happy that I don't. And particularly here in these islands. Now, if it's different, right? If you're in New York or if you're in other places, even Los Angeles, there's different times, Seattle, where you may be more dressed up in a suit and such. But being casual and being authentic, whatever that authenticity is really
Hmm.
important. And so that truck for me comes to mind with that because so many
That's
people
awesome.
that and said, hey, that's real. This guy's real.
I love that. That is great. What's funny is there different parts of the world, different parts of the country, you see different social norms. And here in the Northeast, here in Rhode Island and Boston and New York, you see a lot of people, especially people that do really well in real estate, they're more dressed up, right? And then you see like some of the West Coast like culture come in with some of the brokerages like Real Brokerage or EXP or different brokerages, and you see them wearing like sweatshirts and like sneakers and stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just looked at differently. And in your market, they'd look at me with five heads if I walked in with a suit. They'd be like, "What are you trying to sell me on?" Right? But here, if you walk in with a hoodie, they're looking at you as a part-time agent.
That's
So
right.
it's funny, and it all depends on where you are. But the way I look at it is I'm not dressing up for me. I'm dressing up for my clients to show them that I respect them and this huge purchase or sale that they're willing to make. So everybody looks at it differently. I love your take on it, Kevin. I thought you explained it very well, and I'd hire you in a heartbeat because I know you are truly an authentic person and really somebody that just pushes through. So Kevin, I love that. Great. So much. Thank you so much for coming on the interview. Real quick, can you let us know you're thinking about like 30 seconds or so to give us a quick overview of your marketplace in the San Juan Islands in Washington?
Yeah, so as I said, we have stunning generational waterfront estates. We also have beautiful rural farms. The other thing up here is it's a lifestyle. And it's far more casual. It's not just West Coast, it's an island lifestyle. And so that's the other thing we're selling. And one of the things that our firm is actually the only one that does this. I have docks on every island around here and on the mainland. And so you get here by ferry. It's an hour and a half offshore. However, sometimes those ferry reservations are difficult to get. We will go pick you up on the mainland in our boat, have a bottle of wine waiting for you, drop some crab pots on the way to the island. So it's truly about the lifestyle. And I think that's what's really important. And Emilio, you just nailed it, is each of us as real estate advisors need to represent our communities well and that culture well. So, if I were in Rhode Island, I'd be wearing one of my favorite suits and I would fit in perfectly. But here it's more casual. It's going to be a different sense of aesthetic. But it's also making sure that our clients feel comfortable in whatever scene, whatever community they're in.
That's amazing. And hey, listen, if you're interested in linking up with Kevin Ranker, even if you're just a real estate advisor and you want to know somebody out in the San Juan Islands in Washington, or you're a buyer, a seller, or curious about that landscape, give him a shout. You can go ahead and Google Kevin Ranker Compass, and you're going to go ahead and see him there. Follow him on social media as well. Kevin, thank you again so much, and continue your journey in healing with your back.
Hey.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you.
Bless you, Emilio. Have a beautiful day.
Awesome. You too. And another great wealth architect in the books. So for you wealth architects, that's what we call our listeners, people that want to grow and build wealth financially, physically, spiritually, mentally, make sure that you are keeping in touch with us and subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and make sure you also connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, we are all over the place. So make sure you're doing that. We love to hear from our listeners. And you can go to wealtharchitectradio.com. You can check out the vault. Don't forget to do that, where you can get some exclusive content from our listener, from our guests that have come on. Some really good stuff on there too. So again, I'd like to thank John McNellis, big time developer and book author. We interviewed him a little bit earlier, and also Kevin Ranker with Compass. He's one of our partners over at Realm Global. What a fantastic guy and real estate advisor. Thank to Lucas, AJ, everybody else behind the scenes, Casey, and everybody at iHeartRadio that make this podcast go off. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors, and most importantly, you, our listeners. Thank you so much wherever you're tuning in from. May God bless you, and may you have a successful week ahead. We'll see you later. I'm Emilio Despirito with the Wealth Architect Podcast, signing off.